Hey everyone, welcome to English Pod, where we make learning English fun with How I Met Your Mother. In this series, I'll break down keywords, slang, idioms, and cultural references from each episode to help you improve your English naturally. Watch before or after the episode to boost your understanding. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's get started. First word up is culminating.
Culminating. Okay, so this basically means reaching, like, the highest point, the peak, or maybe the most decisive moment.
Right. And the example from the show was Ted's night seemed to be culminating in a perfect romantic memory.
Exactly. And what's interesting there is how culminating really taps into Ted's whole personality, doesn't it? He tends to build things up in his head.
Oh, definitely. He romanticizes everything.
Right, so this word captures that feeling, that sense that everything that happened that night was leading precisely to this perfect romantic peak with Victoria.
It's like the climax of his own personal movie scene.
Sort of, yeah. It highlights his perspective, how he wants the moment to feel, but, reality.
The reality always bites, which actually leads perfectly into our next word, unshaven.
Yeah, yes. Unshaven. So the line is, future Ted described reality as a cruel, unshaven bastard lurking around the corner.
Such a great line.
It is. And here, unshaven isn't literal, obviously. It's used metaphorically.
To mean what? Exactly. Like rough, unpleasant.
Yeah, rough, unrefined, maybe even a bit threatening. It paints reality as this harsh, unpolished thing that contrasts sharply with Ted's smooth, idealized, culminating moment.
It's funny, but it's also kind of stark. That image of a cruel, unshaven bastard.
It really lands that contrast between the dream and the sometimes messy truth. It's a very How I Met Your Mother way of putting it, funny but poignant.
Totally. Okay, so sticking with Ted's dreams for a sec, let's look at scenario.
Scenario. This one's pretty common. It just means, a possible sequence of events, a situation, often one you imagine.
And the example was Ted's ideal situation at the wedding.
Right. Ted's dream scenario was dancing with Robin at the wedding. So it highlights how we often map things out in our heads, play these little movies of how we wish things would go.
We all do that, don't we? Build these perfect scenarios.
Absolutely. And it sets up that comparison. How often does the dream scenario actually match up with what happens?
Almost never. Which leads to that feeling that maybe the good stuff isn't even real. Which brings us to mirage.
Mirage. An illusion, basically. Something that looks real but isn't.
And Ted has this moment of doubt.
Yeah. The line is, Ted realized the romantic moment might just be a mirage. It's that sudden sinking feeling, isn't it? That maybe this perfect connection, this perfect night is too good to be true.
But it might just disappear if you look too closely.
Exactly. That shimmer of perfection that might not hold up, it plays right into the fear of things getting, tarnished.
Our next word. Tarnished. Meaning damaged or spoiled?
Precisely. Like when metal gets dull or stained, Victoria actually says their night would be a perfect memory that would never be tarnished.
She wants to keep it perfect.
Yeah, it's about preserving the purity of that memory. Like, let's not risk ruining this perfect little bubble we've created by adding messy reality to it, like last names or phone numbers.
Keep it as this unblemished, shiny thing. A perfect snapshot.
But, of course, Victoria is real.
Yeah.
Which brings us nicely to corporeal.
Corporeal. That's a bit formal.
It does. It just means having a physical body, a material form, not being spiritual or ghostly.
And Marshall uses it in a joke, right?
Yeah, he says something like, Victoria wasn't a ghost because she had a corporeal form and picked up a bouquet.
Which is obviously true.
Totally obvious. And that's the humor, using the slightly fancy scientific-sounding word corporeal to state something incredibly self-evident. It's a funny contrast.
Right. Playing with the language. Okay, so Ted, trying to help the very corporeal Victoria, creates a diversion.
A diversion. Yep, something that distracts attention.
Like when he clinks his glass.
Exactly. Ted created a diversion by clinking glasses to help Victoria steal the bouquet. It's a classic move. Create a distraction over here so something else can happen over there.
A bit of strategic misdirection. Shows Ted being quick on his feet for her.
It does. And speaking of things sticking in your mind, the next word is haunt.
Haunt usually sounds negative, like ghosts.
It often is used that way, but here it means something sticking persistently in your memory. Marshall says the wedding cake haunted him because it was just so good.
So it can be positive, too. Like, you can't stop thinking about it.
Absolutely. It shows how powerful a memory can be, good or bad. That cake was so amazing, the memory of it just lingers. Well, it haunts him, but in a good way.
I've definitely had meals that haunted me like that.
Okay, so after the wedding, the gang's trying to find Victoria, which involves the registry,
Registry just means an official list or record. In this case, the hotel's registry.
where guests sign in.
Right. They thought about checking the hotel's registry to see if they could find someone named Victoria staying there. It's just that practical step, the kind of thing you might do to track someone down. Old school searching, before everyone was online.
Pretty much. And finally, for vocabulary, the place where it all happened, the reception.
Reception, meaning the party after the wedding ceremony.
Exactly that. A formal social gathering. Ted met Victoria during Claudia and Stuart's wedding reception. It sets the scene, the specific context for their meeting.
Got it. Okay, that's some great vocabulary. Now let's switch gears a bit and look at some phrases used in the episode. First up, slip away.
Slip away, meaning to leave quietly, sort of unnoticed.
And Victoria suggests this to Ted.
Yeah, she says something like, let's just slip away from the wedding and have our own adventure. There's a kind of romantic, maybe slightly rebellious feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, ditching the main event for something more personal.
Exactly, escaping the crowd, creating their own little bubble.
I like that. Okay, next phrase takes us back to reality again.
Lurk around the corner.
Lurk around the corner. We touched on this with unshaven. It means something, usually something bad or unexpected, is nearby and could appear at any moment.
Like reality waiting to pounce.
Right. Future Ted says, reality is the one who's always lurking around the corner. It emphasizes that feeling that trouble or just, the mundane could interrupt the magic at any time. That sense of impending. Something. Okay, a much more common everyday phrase now. Call it a night.
Ah, yes. Call it a night. Super common idiom. It just means deciding to stop your activities for the evening, head home, go to bed.
Like when Marshall asks Ted.
Yep. You ready to call it a night, buddy? It's just a standard way to signal you're done for the day or evening.
Simple, useful. Now back to Ted and Victoria's connection. Hit it off.
Hit it off means you get along really well with someone right away,
Yeah.
instantly.
Like they had immediate chemistry.
Exactly. Someone observes, you and that girl really hit it off at the wedding. It describes that click, that easy rapport you sometimes find with people from the very first conversation.
It's a great feeling when that happens.
Hmm.
But then there's Victoria's little secret, which leads to throw someone off the trail.
Right. Throw someone off the trail. This means deliberately misleading someone who's trying to find you or follow you.
Because she gave Ted a fake name.
Exactly. The explanation is she gave you a fake name to throw you off the trail. It implies intentional deception to avoid being tracked down later. Adds a bit of mystery to her. Why do that?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Now, Ted's general approach to romance often involves having to take a leap.
Take a leap means taking a risk, making a bold move, often based on faith or hope rather than certainty.
Seems very Ted.
Totally, Ted.
Yeah.
The line is, sometimes you have to take a leap and believe it'll work out. It sums up his impulsive, optimistic, sometimes maybe foolish approach to finding love. Stepping into the unknown.
Gotta admire the optimism, though. Okay, and when they decide not to exchange names, they do it in the spirit of.
In the spirit of. This phrase means doing something with a particular attitude or style, consistent with a certain theme or feeling.
So Victoria says,
In the spirit of romance, let's not ruin this with last names. She's using the idea of romance to justify their decision, framing it as part of the spontaneous, magical feeling of the night.
right, it makes their slightly weird decisions sound romantic and fitting for the moment.
Precisely. It aligns the action with the mood.
Okay. And Victoria herself seemed to appear out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Yeah, meaning completely unexpectedly, without any warning.
Like she just showed up out of the blue and changed the whole night.
Exactly. It emphasizes the suddenness and surprise, how unexpected encounters can just happen and shift everything. A chance meeting.
Those are often the best kind. Now, Ted feels this connection is really important, that there's something at stake.
At stake means something is at risk, in danger of being lost or damaged.
So Ted's thinking,
There's something magical at stake here. Let's not ruin it. It conveys the preciousness of the moment, the high emotional value he places on it. There's a fear of losing this potential magic.
that feeling of having something fragile and important in your hands.
Which connects to the last phrase, put something on hold.
Put something on hold, meaning to postpone or delay it.
Yep. Victoria suggests, let's put reality on hold for one night. It's that desire to just pause the normal world, the worries, the consequences, and just live fully in this special moment.
Create a temporary escape.
Exactly. Savor the present without letting the usual stuff interfere.
Wow. So when you pull it all apart like that, There's actually a lot going on linguistically, even in one episode of a sitcom.
There really is. And seeing these words, these phrases used in context by characters expressing feelings and ideas, it makes them stick so much better than just a vocabulary list.
Absolutely. You get the nuance, the feeling behind the words. It's not just about the dictionary definition.
Right. You see how language shapes the story,
Mhm.
defines the characters, creates the mood.
Okay, let's get into it then. Starting with those cultural references. Think of these as little mental shortcuts the writers are using. They can instantly paint a picture or, land a joke, often relying on some kind of shared understanding.
Exactly. Cultural references, they function almost like a secret language, don't they? Something we all collectively sort of understand.
Yeah.
When you catch one, you immediately grasp the intended meaning or the feeling behind it.
Okay, so the first one we've got is Victoria's Secret. Now, I think most people have heard of this. It's a huge American lingerie brand.
Right. But it signifies more than just, well, selling pretty under things.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, what's fascinating here is its cultural symbolism. Victoria's Secret has become, deeply associated with a very specific, often really idealized image of sexiness and glamour.
Like the fashion shows.
Exactly. Think about those highly produced fashion shows. They're major media events, they really shape perceptions. So this reference speaks to a kind of constructed ideal of femininity, one that's often both aspired to and sometimes critiqued in pop culture. It shows the show's awareness of these social things, even in a comedy.
Right. And in the episode, there's that line, it was like we were in a Victoria's Secret commercial. So if you get that reference, what kind of picture pops into your head?
Well, it instantly conjures up a scene that's highly stylized, visually very appealing, and intentionally sensual.
Yeah.
It's a really quick way to communicate a specific atmosphere or feeling without needing, pages of description.
Exactly. Okay, next up, the Bellagio. Now, for anyone who maybe hasn't been to Las Vegas, what's the key thing to know about the Bellagio? What makes it culturally significant?
The Bellagio is, it's a very luxurious hotel and casino in Vegas, but its real cultural impact, I think, comes from its incredible fountain shows.
Ah, the fountains.
Yeah. These aren't just ordinary water features. They're these elaborate, beautifully choreographed displays. There's music, lights.
People travel to see them, right?
They do, yeah. People come from all over. And the iconic nature of that fountain show in American pop culture has made it a symbol of really magical or romantic moments, often with a sense of, grandiosity.
And the line in the episode is, it was like the fountains at the Bellagio.
Yeah.
So what feeling or idea does that comparison immediately bring to mind?
It suggests a moment that was elegant, romantic, maybe even a little bit over the top.
Extravagant.
Yeah, extravagant or simply breathtaking. The Bellagio fountains have become this kind of shorthand in American pop culture for those sorts of unforgettable, almost dreamlike moments.
Makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Okay, now, who doesn't know James Bond?
Yeah.
Fictional British secret agent. He's all about being suave, sophisticated.
Precisely. James Bond, he's become this globally recognized symbol for a particular brand of sophisticated charm, often mixed with an element of mystery, maybe a hint of danger or exciting romance.
And the example line is, it was very James Bond. So if someone says that, what kind of image or behavior are they trying to get across?
They're likely describing someone's actions or maybe their demeanor as being smooth, confident, perhaps a little bit enigmatic.
Mysterious?
Yeah, maybe even suggesting some underlying intrigue or romantic excitement. It's a very efficient way, isn't it, to communicate a whole set of characteristics and associations.
Definitely. Okay, now we get to a fun one, kind of 2 for 1. The Princess Bride meets Die Hard.
Ah.
For anyone who hasn't seen these two very different movies, what's the quick lowdown?
Okay, so The Princess Bride, that's a much-loved cult classic from the 80s. It's a romantic fantasy adventure, very witty, charming, and it has this sort of fairy tale core.
Right.
As you wish.
Exactly. Die Hard, on the other hand, is the quintessential high-stakes action movie. Bruce Willis. Right. Packed with intense situations, lone hero battling impossible odds.
Yippee-ki-yay. Okay, so when the episode suggests something was like, The Princess Bride meets Die Hard, what kind of bizarre but potentially hilarious mental picture should we have?
Yeah.
But isn't there also a risk there? Combining such different references, could it maybe alienate viewers who don't know both?
That's a really great point. And yes, there's always a slight risk, but I think here the humor often comes from the sheer unexpectedness of the combination itself.
Ah, the contrast.
Exactly. It creates this funny juxtaposition. You have the whimsical romantic bits of the Princess Bride suddenly colliding with the intense action and danger of Die Hard.
Okay.
It's a way to say something started out, sweet or innocent and then suddenly took a very thrilling, maybe even dangerous turn. This kind of blending of like seemingly opposite movie genres is actually a pretty common technique for humor in American dialogue. Definitely sticks in your mind. Okay, then we have Wedding Crasher. Now, this could be referring specifically to that popular 2005 movie, right?
Hmm.
Or just the general idea of someone showing up uninvited to a wedding.
Exactly. While the movie Wedding Crashers definitely boosted the term into widespread use, the concept itself, someone attending a wedding without an invitation, that's been around much longer.
Sure.
The movie just gave it a very specific and humorous cultural context.
And the example line is, "You're a wedding crasher now." What's the typical tone, the implication, when someone says that to you?
It's almost always said jokingly, I think.
Yeah, usually.
It implies someone's unexpectedly appearing at an event they weren't invited to, often with a sense of, like, lighthearted mischief, maybe even a bit of opportunism.
Gotcha.
The cultural note here is really how the movie solidified that particular phrasing and the kind of playful feeling that goes with it.
Right. And finally, the classic fairy tale ending, and they lived happily ever after. We all know what that signifies, don't we?
Absolutely. It's the quintessential ending line to a traditional romance, especially in Western storytelling for a general audience. It represents that idea of a perfect, lasting romantic resolution, the dream.
But in the episode, the line is, "It's not about happily ever after." So what's being communicated by deliberately pushing back against that expectation?
Well, it suggests a more grounded view, perhaps even a slightly cynical perspective on relationships.
A bit more realistic.
Maybe, yeah. It implies that love isn't always a guaranteed perfect ending and that relationships might involve more complexities or have different aims than that idealized fairy tale version.
So you see, all these little cultural nuggets are doing a lot of heavy lifting in a really short amount of time.
Mhm.
If you catch them, you get that added layer of meaning, you understand the intended emotion, and you're just, more plugged into the conversation. Thinking about why you chose this specific episode, it's really clear how much the writers rely on these shared cultural understandings.
Yeah, to quickly establish context and character. Which brings us neatly to another fascinating aspect of this episode, the use of advanced grammar.
Right.
It's not just about the words being used, but the specific way those words are put together. That adds significant depth and nuance to the communication.
Okay, so let's dive into the grammar. First up, we have elliptical constructions. Sounds quite technical, but what does it actually mean in, like, everyday language?
In simple terms, it's when you deliberately leave out words from a sentence because their meaning is already clear from the context around it.
Okay.
This avoids unnecessary repetition and can really enhance the rhythm and the emotional impact of what you're saying.
And the example from the episode is, "And then I turned around and she was gone." Just gone. What's the ellipsis happening there? What's missing?
The second part, just gone, that's the elliptical construction. The subject she and the verb was are left out
Oh, yeah.
because they're already perfectly understood from the first part of the sentence. She was gone.
So why would a writer choose to do that? What's the effect they're aiming for?
Well, in this particular instance, it adds significant emotional emphasis. The abruptness of that short, fragmented phrase, just gone,
Yeah.
it conveys a stronger sense of shock, maybe disbelief, or even loss than if the speaker had just repeated she was just gone. It creates a kind of dramatic pause and really highlights the suddenness of the disappearance.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, how just removing a couple of words can create such a different emotional hit. As someone trying to improve my own communication, understanding these subtle techniques is really valuable.
Yep.
Okay, next, inversion for emphasis. This sounds like someone intentionally flipping the usual word order around.
That's essentially it. Yeah, it involves reversing the standard order of the subject and the verb in a sentence, often to create a more dramatic or sometimes a more formal tone.
Okay.
You'll frequently see this when a negative adverb or maybe an adverbial phrase is placed right at the beginning of the sentence.
And the paraphrased example we have is, "Never before had I seen such a thing." What would be the more typical, everyday way of saying that?
The usual word order would just be, I had never seen such a thing before.
Right.
By putting never before at the start and then inverting the auxiliary verb had and the subject I, the sentence takes on this more formal and emphatic quality.
So it stands out more.
Yeah, it's not how we typically speak in everyday chat, which draws attention to the statement itself.
So it's kind of like adding a verbal exclamation mark, drawing extra attention to that specific part of the sentence.
Precisely. It really emphasizes the unusual nature or maybe the infrequency of the event being described.
All right, next up, mixed conditionals. This sounds a bit more complicated, like we're mixing different grammatical rules together somehow.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. Mixed conditionals combine different types of conditional clauses, usually to talk about a hypothetical situation in the past and its potential result in the present,
Okay.
or sometimes the other way around, actually.
And our paraphrased example is, if I had gone to the wedding earlier, I might be dancing with her now.
Yeah.
Can you break down what's being mixed there? Which parts are which?
Absolutely. So the if clause, if I had gone to the wedding earlier, that's a past unreal conditional. It's talking about a past action that didn't actually happen.
Right, the what if.
And its hypothetical consequence, yeah. Then the main clause, I might be dancing with her now, that's a present unreal conditional. It describes a hypothetical situation in the present that is dependent on that past unreal condition.
Ah, I see.
So it's directly linking a missed opportunity in the past to a different potential reality in the present moment. This specific tense structure lets the character kind of dwell on a past decision and its direct, tangible impact on their present, which really underscores themes of regret, maybe, or the weight of missed chances.
So it's a useful tool for expressing regrets or pondering those what ifs that have ongoing consequences.
Exactly. It allows for a more complex and nuanced expression of hypothetical scenarios that bridge different points in time.
Now, we have cleft sentences, often starting with it is or it was, followed by that. This sounds like a way to spotlight a particular piece of information, put a little flashlight on it.
That's exactly the purpose, yeah. Cleft sentences are designed to place emphasis on a specific element within a sentence. The basic structure, it is was, plus the bit you want to emphasize, plus that who, plus the rest of the clause. It serves to bring that particular piece of information into sharp focus for the listener.
And the example from the episode is, it wasn't about who she was. It was about what we felt. What's being specifically highlighted using that structure?
Well, the structure clearly emphasizes what we felt as the crucial factor. It directly contrasts it with who she was.
Right.
It steers the listener's attention away from the person's identity and puts it squarely onto the emotional connection between the two people. It's almost like saying, look, the important thing wasn't this aspect, it was this other aspect.
Makes perfect sense. It's a very effective way to create focus and draw a clear distinction between two ideas. Okay, next up is the subjunctive mood. I know I've definitely stumbled over sentences like that myself sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's helpful to understand what's actually going on grammatically.
Yeah.
This is one that a lot of English learners find quite challenging, I think.
It can indeed be tricky. The subjunctive mood is used to express things that are not necessarily factual things, like wishes, hypothetical situations, suggestions, or commands sometimes.
Okay.
It often involves using a different form of the verb than what we'd normally use for ordinary factual statements. That's the indicative mood.
And our paraphrase example is, if only she were here. What's the key indicator there that this is the subjunctive mood at work?
The key here is the use of were instead of was. In a factual statement describing a past situation, we'd say, she was here. However, if only she were here expresses a wish or a desire for a situation that is contrary to the current reality. This specific use of were for all singular subjects, I, he, she, it in these kinds of wishful or hypothetical clauses is a classic sign of the subjunctive mood.
Right.
So it's like saying, I wish things were different. I really wish she was here right now, but she isn't.
Got it. So it indicates a situation that isn't actually the case and often conveys that sense of longing or maybe regret. Okay, we're moving on to relative clauses with implied antecedents. That sounds quite abstract, like something you might find buried in a grammar textbook.
It does sound a bit dry, doesn't it?
Yeah. Can you explain it in a more relatable way?
Absolutely. Okay, think of a relative clause as just a phrase that gives you extra information about a noun, right? Often starting with words like who, which, or that.
Okay.
The antecedent is simply the noun that the relative clause is referring back to the thing it's giving us more details about. Now, sometimes, instead of stating that original noun directly, the writers might just imply it. So the relative clause is still modifying something, but that something isn't explicitly mentioned right where you'd expect it. It's like the sentence is pointing to someone or something, but instead of saying their name directly, it describes them by what they do.
Okay, and the paraphrased example is, everything she said made me want to know more about the person who said it.
Yeah.
Where's this implied antecedent happening?
Okay, so the relative clause here is who said it. The antecedent, the noun it's giving us more information about, is the person. Now, while the person is mentioned there,
Right.
the structure kind of implies that the person is almost defined solely by the act of speaking those specific words. It creates a sort of circular yet still understandable reference. It adds a layer of complexity by implying the specific identity of the person rather than stating it super directly.
Right, so it's like the action of speaking becomes the defining characteristic in that moment almost.
Exactly that, yes.
Okay, and finally, we have the perfect aspect in narration. What's the purpose of that in storytelling? Why use it?
The perfect aspect, which uses verb forms like the present perfect, have or has plus the past participle, or the past perfect had plus the past participle, is really crucial for establishing the timeline of events in a story.
Okay, the timeline.
Yeah, think of it as a way to kind of zoom out from a specific moment in time and show us how events connect across time. Like what had already happened before this moment we're talking about, or what has happened up to this point and is still relevant. It helps the listener understand the sequence and the relationships between different actions or states.
And the example from the episode is, I had never felt that way before. How does the past perfect tense, had felt, contribute to the meaning there?
The use of the past perfect had felt clearly indicates an action in this case, a feeling that was completed at some point in the past before another past event that's being narrated or implied.
Wow, okay.
It clarifies the sequence of feelings in the story. So, at a certain point in the past, the speaker recognized that this particular feeling was unlike anything they had experienced up until that point. It establishes a clear history leading up to that specific moment in the narrative.
So it's all about creating that sense of chronology and showing how past events connect to the present moment of the story being told.
Precisely. It provides crucial context and helps you, the listener, really understand the order in which things happened or were experienced by the characters.
Wow, that is genuinely a lot to unpack from just one episode.
Here's a synopsis of How I Met Your Mother, Season 1, Episode 13, drumroll, please. At Claudia and Stuart's wedding reception, Ted meets a mysterious and charming woman named Victoria. They instantly hit it off and share an incredibly romantic evening together, filled with witty conversation, flirtation, and a magical connection. They decide not to exchange names or contact information, choosing instead to leave the night as a perfect memory. Ted is captivated by her, and their chemistry is undeniable. The episode captures the beauty of a spontaneous romantic encounter, complete with a drumroll before their first kiss. Meanwhile, Marshall struggles with his wedding toast, trying to find the right words to honor the bride and groom, while Barney tries, and fails, to pick up women at the reception with his usual playbook antics. The next day, Ted can't stop thinking about Victoria and wonders if he made a mistake by not getting her name. The episode ends with a twist. We learn that Victoria isn't gone for good.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed learning new words, phrases, grammar, and cultural references from How I Met Your Mother. I'll be back with the next lesson soon. Until then, bye.